Okay, hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the quest for an ELN we actually want to use. And I need to click my slides. All right, so I work at a company called just Evotec Biologics. We're located in South Lake Union here in Seattle. And as our name suggests, we are a biologic company. And this is a picture of our small family. I put small in air quotes because back when this photo was taken in 2019, there was about 90 of us. And since then, we've almost doubled in size. But we still have that small company feel. So it's still a small company in my mind. This is me. I work in the High-Throughput Analytical Sciences group, as Bernie mentioned, and I also happen to be the ELN administrator here. So who are we? Well, we're an integrated design company, but what does that really mean? Our company is focused on technologies, and we're focused on developing a technological platform that will help accelerate the development of biotherapeutics and substantially reduce their cost and development time. So our mission is to design and apply these innovative technologies to help dramatically expand global access to biotherapeutics. And we do this by being a super cross-functional company. And our goal as a cross-functional company is to knock down those silos that you tend to see at big biotherapeutic companies. And that will help us enable data transfer amongst those groups and also enable our technology. And at the center of our company is our in-house integrated technology platform called JDesign. And the core of JDesign is a common data management system, namely LabKey, that helps centralize and integrate our data coming from the four main groups at our company. Those being discovery, molecular design, process design, and manufacturing design. In discovery, we leverage machine learning to create large, diverse, and manufacturable discovery libraries. In molecular design, we leverage our in-house suite of proprietary computational tools that help enable prediction of the best molecules and conditions for development. Over in process design, we're really focused on optimizing the process. So that means cell lines, vectors, media, chromatography, filtration, biophysical and formulation development tools, and high-resolution analytical capabilities. And then in manufacturing design, we're focusing on disposable technologies and intensified processes to help create a flexible and relatively low-cost biomanufacturing facility. But what's key to note here is our solutions are data-driven, and that flow of data is huge between our groups. So that's what's really important to our success here. And so I'm going to start by talking about our workflows at Just and how those relate to LabKey, where all of our data lives. So I'll start with our upstream workflows, talking about J-discovery, cell line development, and media. And at the center of all these workflows is LabKey Biologics. This is Brendan over in J-discovery. Most of his day consists of creating nucleotide sequences, constructs, and samples, and putting all that information into LabKey. Over in cell line development, we have Pauline. In her pre-COVID spare time, she likes to spend time posing for pictures behind blank walls with antibodies. And most of her days consist of managing her transfections, selections, and productions. And she leverages project workflows and LabKey's API abilities to help create cell passaging, production, and cloning automation workflows, which help increase her capacity. So previously, she was able to do 4 stable pools, and now with this API automation workflow ability, she can go up to doing 24 stable pools. She does a lot of inventory management as well, keeping track of all those cells that live in her freezer. Sample generation and lineage is really huge for this group. So keeping track of all of those cell lines, constructs, and intended molecules that are coming from that J-discovery group. And assay submissions. Of course, everybody wants product quality data, so that assay submissions get submitted through LabKey and head over to us in the analytical group eventually. Over in media development, we have Abby. And most of her day is spent creating and tracking media batches. And so you can imagine with creating media, there's quite a bit of raw materials, ingredients, and mixture management, and inventory management to keep track of everything that she needs. She also does quite a bit of sample generation and assay submission for product quality as well. And all the media that she's making gets sent back to that cell line development group and off to the bioreactor group. And keeping track of all this media data in LabKey is what allows us to then leverage tracking how media affects our cell line and how media affects our bioreactors. Continuing with our workflows, I'm going to move a little bit further downstream. And again, at the center of all these workflows is LabKey Biologics. Over in the bioreactor group, we have Abigail, and most of her day consists of tracking her bioreactor runs. She does quite a bit of sample generation, and she leverages LabKey's API abilities again to create run sheet plots to track every single day of her bioreactor runs. She gets all of that media from the media group, like I was saying previously, and with that media comes all the data associated with that media. And this allows her to look for media effects in her bioreactor runs, which is super cool. She does quite a bit of assay submission for product quality as well. And so that will get sent over to the assay group and the analytical group, which is me, later. Over in purification, we have Jan. All the material that he's purifying comes over from the bioreactor group with all that data associated with it. When he has that material, he's able to create material requests, and again, has a bunch of high throughput purification workflows that he's created that allow him to go from previously purifying 8 samples a day to maybe 296 well plates a day. So you can imagine producing that many samples also means he has quite a bit of bulk assay requests to do. And all these assay requests come to me over in analytical. I also get some material to be purified from the bioreactors and do a little bit more quick and dirty purifications to create material requests and assay submissions and send all of that assay submission data right back to myself where I run those assays. After running those assays, I get a lot of raw data, and most of my raw data analysis happens in Empower. And we've created LabKey APIs as well to upload all of this Empower metadata right back into LabKey. Over in the drug product design group, we have Mark. Mark deals with hundreds of samples a day too for his formulation and biophysical studies. And so he uses sample generation as well and uses the experiment tool in LabKey to help track all these hundreds of samples. He does quite a bit of assay submission as well, and then also uploads all of his biophysical assay data into LabKey. So all this data is living in LabKey, but where does it go? So it goes off to our data science and molecular design group, and they are ultimately what's tying everything together here at JUS. This is them. This is our COVID stitched together photos, since we haven't been able to get them together since COVID times. But these guys are what is fueling our company. They can often be found sitting in front of their dual monitor setup, looking at antibodies and digging through tons of data sets to find trends and hits. They get all of this data that's coming from all these groups I just discussed via LabKey Biologics. And all of this data is then allowing them to do deep data dives and push out valuable analytics and learnings that feed right back into all of our groups to improve our processes, help improve optimization, and effectively is what enabling us to increase our capacity, increase our speed, increase our quality, and lower our cost. So this is everything that's fueling our company. Oh, and then there's the long lost ELN that's lingering in the back of everyone's mind months down the road. And so why are we forgetting about our notebooks? Like, what's the hang up? Well, the reason our documentation is often getting dropped is mainly because there just isn't a great ELN solution out there, and it's not integrated into any of our workflows. And this is really common in most industries. Most people are tending to do their ELNs after the fact because it's not integrated in their workflows. They keep all of their data somewhere else, and then the ELN is kind of an afterthought. So I just kind of want to talk about what our current ELN looks like. I'm not allowed to mention its name, but it'll help you understand kind of why ELN is getting dropped. So our current ELN is a paper and glass solution, but almost too literally. So assessing a bunch of criteria, including the UI, the ability to attach files, document upload size limits, functionality, and cost, it really just doesn't perform well. Although it is supposedly compatible with Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, we're often running into issues where we can't actually upload these files and they fail to upload consistently. Our document display is limiting us to both size and view, so uploading those documents is capped. And unfortunately, when we attach files, those files aren't actually visible during the sign-off phase, so most of our sign-offs are happening blindly, which is not the point of an ELN. So after being crowned the ELN administrator and being fed up with our ELN for too long, I decided to form a team of scientists from each area of research, namely the ones I just described, to try and find us a better ELN. So we decided to start by evaluating 3 out-of-the-box ELN options. My lawyer insisted that I was not allowed to name these options, so for the purpose of this talk, I will be referring to them as solution 1, 2, and 3. And we assessed a bunch of criteria, including UI, features, ability to do file attachments, ease of sign-off, data accessibility, and cost. Solution 1 is a task-based ELN, and unfortunately it had quite a cumbersome UI that required you to create tasks for each step of your notebook. So when you wanted an introduction, you were stuck making a task for that introduction. Materials and methods, another task. And unfortunately, this just got really like endlessly long. And when you went to go sign off all of that data, you also had to sign off each individual task. So although the data, the ELN was cheap, it really didn't make us want to write our notebooks more. And so we all agreed this wasn't a good option for us. Solution 2 is ELN that's designed for small molecules. And so this could definitely be tailored to be a biotherapeutic ELN as well. But what we found was, again, problems with the UI. The notebooking window was really small. It required you to do quite a bit of scrolling when you had large file attachments. And everything was displayed in line. So you can imagine that when you're displaying Excel files that have hundreds of columns or multiple tabs, having all of that data trimmed is essentially cutting out all of the data. So again, just not a good option for us. Solution number 3 is kind of the gold standard ELN out there. It's a task-based ELN as well. And despite being the gold standard, it was just not as clean and simple as we wanted it to be. It had too much fluff and also excessive features that we already had in LabKey, namely sample registration and inventory. And in our minds, why duplicate that? If we already use a system that we love, why would we want that in another system? And at the end of the day, it was extremely not cost effective. And so with our growth here at Just, none of these options were good for us. But the biggest thing was the data accessibility. At the end of the day, all 3 ELNs still had the data living outside the ELN. So we would still be an afterthought as an ELN. It wouldn't be part of our workflow, which is what we needed. So we decided to go back to square one to define what the ideal ELN looked like for us. We want something with a simple and clean UI. So I think everybody can agree that in order to have a notebook that gets used, you need it to be simple to use and easy to adopt. We want something with easy and powerful searchability. So similar to LabKey, where we can dig up hundreds of samples, dig up assay requests from years ago, and have all of that data really easily accessible. We want the same thing in our ELN. So we can dig up the data that lives in our ELN, namely our explanations of all of our data. We want that to be easy to find. Obviously, we want the ability to view attachments at each ELN phase. This is the biggest hang up in our current ELN. Not being able to view those attachments during the sign-off is super awful. So wanting to be able to view those attachments while you're making the notebooks, while you're reviewing the notebooks, and after you've reviewed the notebooks. One of the things that we saw in a lot of ELN options out there is this ability to reference. Namely, in those ELN options, that's referencing users and referencing other notebooks. But we wanted to take this one step further and also be able to reference our data. So for us, that means referencing samples, assays, and experiments in LabKey. Obviously, a functional and valid sign-off phase is very key to an ELN. You can't have an ELN that is purposeful without this, and our current one, having to blindly sign off data, is not that. Something with collaborative notebooks would be great because as a company that is super cross-functional and collaborative, we're often collaborating on experiments, and why duplicate that data in 2 ELNs when we could just have 1 ELN and work together to create that ELN. And we want something that is a notebook and just a notebook. Like I said, we use LabKey for everything else in our workflows. We don't need to duplicate that within our ELN. And most importantly, we want an ELN that lives with our data. And so this is kind of where the light bulb went off, and we realized, why don't we ask LabKey to build us an ELN? And they agreed to it, and over the past 6 months or so, we've been working on this ELN with LabKey, and they've been helping us make this a reality. And so now that you've seen the demo, I kind of just want to talk about how this translates back to us and our workflows here at Just. So the simple and clean UI. Like Bernie showed, the homepage is exactly what you want it to be. It has quick access links to everything you need, allowing you to easily toggle between all the different experiments you have going on, easily search for data that exists in other notebooks, and access those tasks that you need to do. So check to see if you have notebooks that are waiting on you, ones that are overdue, ones that have been returned to you, and ones that you've submitted for review. So having this clean, simple UI is going to make this really easy to use, really easy to adopt, and help keep up with our notebooks. Again, simple and clean UI in the notebook actual writing phase, it's exactly what you want it to be and exactly what you expect. Something that is super customizable and something that has, simple plain text fields, but also the ability to add in attachments in line and display those images that you would like. The ability to reference is probably the single most the biggest thing in simplifying our workflows, as it's cutting out that time sink of duplication for us. That's a huge time sink for us. And Bernie mentioned this earlier, but it's so true. Unfortunately, right now, the way we do ELNs, the reason we're doing them months later is because nobody wants to have to sit there and just copy and paste data left and right when they already have that data existing somewhere. So simplifying that workflow and having all of that data easily linked in is what is huge to making that time sink disappear. And so being able to link in samples, assays, experiments, other notebooks, and then things like mixtures and, you know, other registry items is going to be great. And having that be able to be linked in right away. So previously, where you'd want to give sample lineage details or assay data details, you'd have to copy and paste that into your ELN. And now we can simply just reference that sample and have a direct link to its lineage, or reference that assay and have a direct link to all that assay data. And then thirdly, the ability to sign off data with ease. So the data sign-off phase often is something that is slowing us down because people tend to forget about signing off notebooks. And if there are problems with some of these notebooks, you're stuck going to find them and telling them, hey, can you fix this in your notebook so I can return it to you, and blah, blah, blah. It just takes forever. So having something that's easy to submit for review, easy to review and give feedback, and then have it be done is going to definitely enable quicker turnarounds for our notebook reviews. And so from that homepage, I'm ready to submit for review, and right at the top, there's a button that brings me to the next page. It shows me this great summary of having all of my entries, all of my attachments right there. I can go to the signature page, request who I want it to review by, give them a deadline, and it's done. And then on the other side, the reviewer sees exactly what I saw. So they see my notebook exactly as it exists with all of those reference items, all of those attachments that are viewable. And it really makes it easy for them to just go ahead, go back to that signature page, give comments, put their username and password, and be done. And the biggest thing here, I think, will be in the future, we'll have the ability to comment directly in the notebook. And that's really going to enable our collaboration. And I think collaboration is huge at Just, and with many other companies, that's something that's really lacking. And being able to collaborate on those notebooks and allow for that, quick turnaround is really going to take out some of the time sink. And so our path forward, despite this being a demo product, is super bright. Right now, our ELN and our data will be living in the same place. And so everything that's coming out of LabKey is now just going to feed right back into it, because that's exactly where all of our data is living. And so the biggest thing here is choosing to work with LabKey is probably the best company we could have chosen to partner with us for, because they're constantly working to help us grow and continue improving and enabling us to make those improvements. So while this is currently a demo product, this is just the beginning. And as we continue to demo this product, and as we continue to use it, we're going to find out that maybe we need to make some changes here and there, and how maybe we can improve our workflows. And LabKey is there to help us do that. So now our ELN is no longer going to be an afterthought, but rather it's going to exist where our data already exists. And with that, I want to just thank LabKey for helping make this ELN a reality. Thank you guys for listening to my presentation, and thanks to LabKey for giving me an opportunity to present on a product that I'm super stoked about.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much. So if anybody has any questions, I would greatly appreciate you adding them to the Q&A for Tara. I do already have some in here, so perhaps while I'm asking Tara, other people could paste theirs in there. So this one seems fun. How have your workflows as well as your ELN needs changed, if at all, during COVID times?
That's good. So given the fact that we are, cutting our time on site, most of our time on site now is just purely being in the lab, and the interactions that we've had with people have obviously cut down. Being a company that is like super cross-functional and works in open space, now we don't really have those conversations that were so easy to have. Everything is happening online. And so with our workflows, that obviously is slowing things down, because we're not being able to just easily walk up to somebody's desk and be like, hey, can you get me this data? It's now it's requires, chains of email threads or Hangouts messages. But I think in terms of our ELN, this is, if anything, like showing us more and more that we need a collaborative ELN space. And so I think once we have that, ability to collaborate on notebooks and ability to comment on those notebooks, both during the actual notebooking phase and review phase, which is something that's later to come, it's really going to help us accelerate that whole ELN process. And our workflow is then going to have that ELN in place with it, which I think is what is really our hang up right now, is that our ELN lives so far out of our workflows, and our workflows for us are super efficient and work really well for us. And we're constantly trying to improve and optimize them and, add more workflows. So bringing that ELN in there is just going to help make everything work more smoothly.
Thank you. I've got another one on here that you should find interesting. Let's see, how do I summarize this? Okay, so it sounds like you'll be switching over from an existing one. Can you talk a little bit about how you, like what the rollout plan looks like for making a switch over, or for rolling out an ELN from a paper-based system looks like at all?
Yeah, so our current ELN, we had to renew our ELN just to, keep consistency with our ELN as we demo this product. And so the team of scientists that I put together is kind of our LabKey user group, and we will be the ones beta testing the notebook to kind of help the rollout phase. So once we have that first version, we'll be beta testing that, and it'll give us an opportunity to find and look for improvements that need to be made and see how it fits into our workflows and kind of what we can make better and how we can improve on it. And then once we've hit that stage, we'll bring it out to the rest of our scientists. And because it's already existed in somebody's hands in every single group, it'll be really easy for there to be kind of a point person to help teach the ELNs. I'm sure I'll give a presentation to demo the ELN and teach people how to use it. And so for me, it's pretty smooth. Our data transfer is going to be pretty easy in the sense that we're kind of just going to export everything that exists in our ELN and archive it for the time being. I don't think it's necessarily worth it to us to have all of that data exist in LabKey right now. So that's not happening for us, but I think that the transition will be really smooth. All of us are super familiar using LabKey, and so we kind of understand how the workflows work there. And I think it's going to be super easy and quick to learn how to use this referencing ability and making notebooks super easy.
Thank you. There's a couple more in here. So is your vision that your coworkers will fill out their ELNs in real time, kind of as they collect and import the data? What do you expect that to look like?
I think that's the ideal vision for any company, is that you have a notebook that you're doing as you do experiments. Obviously, that becomes hard if you don't have computers in every single one of your lab spaces and you have small lab spaces. I think that kind of exists for us, but I think the goal is that because it's going to be in LabKey where all of our workflows exist, and so we're all heavily using LabKey for just our day-to-day as is, it's going to be really easy to maintain those notebooks as you are real-time doing those experiments. And because you won't have to worry about data duplication, again, it's going to be really easy to be like, oh, those assay results got uploaded. Let me go back to my ELN and just tag those, because it's super quick. That's a minute of your time instead of maybe 30 minutes where you have to take all that data, compile it into whatever view you want it, make sure it uploads correctly, make sure it displays correctly. And that is no longer going to be something that people will do. So I see it functioning as more of a real-time ELNing situation. I know that many people will not use it as such, because the truth of the matter is most of us do our experiments in the lab and try to get out our data as quickly as possible. And then we remember, oh yeah, we have to ELN it. So I think it's going to allow for both, but hopefully it will transition us to, instead of doing our ELNs months down the road, maybe it'll be like a week down the road.
Very good. And there's another one on here about some of your workflows, not specific to any particular workflow, but in general. It's asked, how do the FDA's quality by design guidelines interface with your workflows?
I don't know if I can answer this question. The FDA quality by design guidelines.
Yeah, so I think it's okay not to necessarily answer directly about the FDA's guidelines, but maybe you could talk about how you have designed your workflows to meet with the both scientific and regulatory criteria related to the biotherapeutic development that you do.
Yeah, so I will say that all of our manufacturing side of things does not live within LabKey, just because all of the GMP regulations there are pretty tight and strict, and so we have a different system for all of that work. But in terms of, you know, keeping up with being like ready to send all of our data out as necessary, that's where the ELN comes into a big play. So like if we're working on a product that we know needs to go to an IND soon, those ELNs need to be done in order for us to have, you know, valid data places. And so I think having our workflows as they exist now, they really enable all of the speed and the capacity to go through our lab really quickly, but the ELN not being part of that really slows down that phase of having all of those documents ready for a regulatory review. And so I think that having all of it in LabKey now is or the ELN included, is really gonna help keep those two together. And so it'll help us prepare quicker, because right now we're probably tailing behind, and it's usually like, oh, I did all the work, but I still have to ELN it, and somebody's bugging me about getting my ELN done so that all those files can be reviewed. I don't know if that really answered it.
That's okay. We can follow up with this on that particular question another time. Thank you, Tara. That is all of the questions that are in the chat right now.